Welcome to the channel. It's getting kind of hot in here. Today, we're talking about all things coolant temperature sensor related. We're going to be talking three things here today. The engine ECU temperature sensor, the one that actually, tells the engine computer what your temperature is. The inside cabin one, which on some vehicles has no actual relation to the ECU temperature. And adding a third mechanical type gauge somewhere in the system. In our case, the thermostat housing on your...
The Dorman Thermostat Housing 9021001 fits 90s Ford F150, 250, 350, 50, and 5.8 liters. Wow, that's compatibility.
To finally get some accurate readings on your engine. You wouldn't think that'd be hard at all. Like, that sounds like it would be logical. No, it's not. And this is what we're working with today. A 1995 Ford F150 that never warms up. Like, this is as good as it gets. I'm not 100% sure what N translates to into Fahrenheit, but clearly it's not right. Even after driving this thing for about 15 miles to work, temperature barely gets on the N. If you're lucky, it'll get on the O. Testing it with an IR thermometer, well, that means about 157 degrees-ish. Ford in their Infinite Wisdom recognized that the ECU temperature senders, well, they have some problems. These pins inside the ECU temperature connector, well, they like to snap off. They like to PD. It's when the bird's head falls off and doesn't matter. What's different about an ECU sensor versus a gauge sensor? Glad you asked. There's a two-wire sensor. That basically means that one of the wires is a solid dedicated ground that it knows is good 80% of the time, and the other wire is the actual signal sense. Unfortunately, the updated sensor has a different pigtail connector and it'll need to be wired up, but it does come as a little kit and it includes some heat shrink. I chose to solder mine in just to make sure I've got the best connection. I don't believe this ECU temp sensor is actually the cause of our problems. It's more of a symptom. But while we got the cooling system opened up, got an old sensor in here, just gonna swap it to the revised one, throw parts at it, see what sticks. The next honorable mention part we're gonna throw on her today is the gauge cluster temperature sending unit itself. It's located just under the distributor on the driver's side. But man, how do one-wire sensors work? I don't understand. It's probably what you're saying to yourself, hammered at Taco Bell, 2 a.m. These little guys rely on the housing and threads of the sensor itself to get the ground to the intake manifold. The intake manifold generally relies on the bolts that hold the intake manifold on to get the ground to whatever the bolts on the intake manifold are grounded to. As you can imagine, that's a fun little corrosion command structure hierarchy that likes to break down emotionally over time and get some corrosion in there and mess up your readings. Or in our truck's case, the previous owner was nice enough to tie up all those loose, pesky grounds for me. Thanks, I guess. Instead of Teflon tape here, I like to use a dollop of RTV on the sensor shed, especially when the threads look like, well, they've seen some shit. On the surface, this Dorman thermostat housing looks like a regular thermostat housing. Well, you're not wrong. But on the under surfaces, it's got a 3/8 NPT tapped hole. All of my videos about tapping holes, well, they're on a different website. Using the name, it's part of the web address, but not this one. We're gonna be taking this compact engine thermometer, threading in a report on our thermostat, have an on-engine and hopefully accurate way of measuring temperature as a backup solution. This way, you've got a super simple and reliable way of checking your engine temperature, even if you have to get under the hood to do it. The installation is pretty straightforward. We're gonna pull our upper radiator hose, a little bypass heater hose, and pull the thermostat housing off the intake manifold. And it looks like we found our cooling system issue. Looking through the front of the thermostat opening, you can see the back of the thermostat. On the surface, that doesn't sound wrong, but that's the back of the thermostat. I have just finished up a full frontal Inspector Gadget level investigation. What I think happened was originally they put this thermostat in backwards. Could have been the previous owner somehow got backwards. Might have let everything get really hot before it opened. So to fix it, they took the center section of the thermostat, kicked it over to the side, allowed some hot coolant to get by. Ironically, properly registered temperature, sorta. It's been like that for the last 7 years or so. Working like a champ. But the curiosity is killing the mat. Let's go inside and do some garage kitchen cooking, I guess. With this old thermostat, I want to see if it actually opens and works. And at the same time, we're going to test out our brand new Motorcraft thermostat. Always give your thermostats a cooking before you install them. Unfortunately, over the years, I've had several stand thermostats fail on me. Even one of them was a fail-safe, and it did not safely fail, let me put it that way. I'm going to show you the process of this thermostat opening up. Yeah, that's nice. Wow. If you're looking for an engine temperature sensor that actually goes on the engine, call it an engine thermometer, not a sensor. You're going to get really weird results and basically just gauges if you Google search engine temperature gauge. When you're ordering parts, also toss in a Felpro gasket. The paper gaskets that come with these Dorman thermostats, they're just garbage. They're just awful. I really don't understand the rhyme or reason why some OE thermostat housings have thick flanges and some have thin, but make sure your bolts are the proper length for your new one. While I was dicking around in this area, I noticed that our bypass hose might be the sketchiest looking thing I've ever seen in my life. So to make sure our brand new pile of antifreeze doesn't end up all over the ground, I'm gonna go ahead and replace this while I'm in there. Want to know a little trick that'll make the next owner hate and love you at the same time? Take some anti-seize and rub it all over the metal you clamp your hoses to, and the next owner will hate love you. They'll love you. Hell, I love you. To make sure the intake manifold flange is perfectly machined, we're gonna use this random piece of plastic I found laying around in my garage because, well, it's flatter than my hand. Shockingly, our old thermostat worked just fine, but we're gonna go ahead and replace it with a Motorcraft 195-degree unit. This is what the correct thermostat orientation looks like. As you can see, it barely clears the probe. To make this job less sketchy, but ironically more messy next time, I'm gonna slather up these mounting bolts with some high temp anti-seize. But we don't have to worry about sealing them because these bolts don't penetrate the water jacket. I'm then gonna finger paint RTV under the gasket. I've never had one leak after a half tube of RTV. Once everything's tight and dry, go ahead and slam your hoses back on and top it off with coolant. I've started the engine up and I'm leaving the radiator cap off and slowly adding more coolant as it warms up. I also like to squeeze the hoses and try to burp out all the extra air from the system. But then I'll go for a quick drive and let it cool off overnight and check it again. And there you have it, the easiest backup temperature reading solution I got for you. Honestly, don't have too many of those floating around in my back pocket for you. It's worth mentioning that if you're trying to recreate this project, you have to use a Motorcraft thermostat. The Stance have 3 fins that support the center section. The Motorcrafts just have one big bar across the center. And if you don't use the Motorcraft one, well, the temp probe will actually end up hitting the thermostat. And I even used a file to just take off a little material on the top just to give me some clearances so they weren't touching. But it doesn't seem to matter. Right, hey, thanks for watching. You know, if you like this video, do that thing you know I like. Oh yeah, that one right there. Wow, that feels good for me. Less for you. We've got a full-on revival video, this F-150 that's been parked at least over 6 years, coming soon to the channel, so I want you to be there for that. I think you need to be there for that. You're gonna be, yeah, you're gonna be there for that. God damn it. Back up already. Just back up. Welcome, god damn it, bird. But why the important yeah, words.